The conference room smelled of burnt coffee and quiet surrender. Fluorescent lights hummed above a long glass table where 12 people sat pretending to care about quarterly projections. At the far end, a tall man with closely cropped dark hair and sharp eyes sat perfectly still, the kind of stillness that makes other people shift in their seats without knowing why. His name was Ethan Cole. The promotion announcement came the way these things always do. Soft applause, a forced smile from the man who got the title Ethan had earned 3 years running, and a dozen pairs of eyes sliding toward him, waiting for the flinch, waiting for the polite congratulations, waiting for him to shrink. Ethan did none of it. He stood. He put on his coat, and without a raised voice, without a slammed door, without a single word of explanation, he walked out. The silence he left behind was heavier than any speech he could have given, because what terrifies people more than anger is a mind that no longer needs their approval to exist. That walk out of the building was not an ending. It was the first step of a transformation most people will never have the courage to begin. And if you are still watching this, something inside you already knows. You are closer to that walk than you want to admit. Have you ever felt it? That moment when your growth starts making the people around you uncomfortable. They do not say it outright. They hide it behind jokes, behind advice dressed up as concern, behind that awkward silence when you speak about something deeper than weekend plans and office gossip. But underneath the performance, the truth is simple. Your evolution is a mirror they do not want to look into. Today, we are placing the stamp of mental fortitude on your mindset framework, and by the time this video ends, nothing will be able to shake you the same way again. This is not a pep talk. This is not another hollow motivation video designed to make you feel good for 12 minutes and change nothing. This is a confrontation, a reconstruction, a complete mindset transformation built on the raw steel of Nietzsche philosophy and the lived reality of what it costs to build an unbreakable mind. Friedrich Nietzsche was not a self-help guru. He was a surgeon of the human soul. He looked into the abyss of existence and refused to look away. And what he found there is the blueprint for a kind of mental strength so complete, so absolute, that it unsettles everyone who still lives on autopilot. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you did something that made someone around you uncomfortable? Not because you were wrong, but because you were right. Because you chose discipline over comfort, truth over belonging, self-mastery over the soft applause of people who have already given up. If that question stings, stay, because what you are about to hear will not comfort you. It will arm you. The chaos that builds greatness. Most people spend their entire lives running from chaos. They organize their days to avoid discomfort. They choose the familiar job, the safe opinion, the relationship that never demands they grow. They sand down every rough edge until nothing sharp remains, and then they wonder why they feel empty. Nietzsche saw through this. He understood that the very thing people fear most is the raw material of greatness. He wrote, "You need to have a chaos inside you to give birth to a dancing star." Read that again. Not order, not comfort, not a 5-step morning routine copied from someone else's highlight reel. Chaos. The internal storm, the contradiction, the restlessness that will not let you sleep through your own life. Think about it. Every person you admire, every mind that reshaped history, built empires, or created something the world had never seen, carried a storm inside them first. The dancing star is not born in a climate-controlled room. It is forged in the friction between who you are and who you refuse to remain. Mental toughness is not the absence of chaos. It is the decision to stop running from it, to stand inside the fire and let it burn away everything that is not essential. The disciplined mindset begins here, not with control over the world, but with the courage to face the disorder within yourself and shape it into something luminous. You have been taught that peace means the absence of struggle. That is a lie sold by people who never built anything worth keeping. Real peace, the kind that cannot be taken from you, is what arrives after you have walked through your own chaos and come out the other side, carrying a star no one else can extinguish. 3 weeks after Ethan Cole walked out of that conference room, he sat alone in a one-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city. No job, no title, no LinkedIn announcement celebrating his next chapter, just a tall man with sharp eyes and closely cropped dark hair, staring at a blank notebook on a kitchen table that still smelled like the previous tenant's cigarettes. His phone buzzed with messages, concerned ones, judgmental ones, the ones that said he had thrown everything away. He did not answer any of them. Instead, he opened the notebook and wrote a single sentence: "I will not build my life on anyone else's permission again." What he did not know yet, what the chaos inside him was already preparing, was that this empty room would become the forge, and the man who walked out of that meeting was about to become someone the people who pitied him would no longer recognize. If this content is speaking to something real inside you, click the subscribe button right now. Your support means everything, and there is so much more coming. When you stop needing permission to exist. There is a moment in every serious life when the scaffolding collapses. The beliefs you inherited, the gods you were handed, the rules that kept you small and grateful for it. Nietzsche named this collapse with 4 words that still shake the modern world: God is dead, and we have killed him. He was not celebrating atheism for its own sake. He was diagnosing a civilizational wound. When the old sources of meaning dissolve, when the institutions, the traditions, the ready-made answers stop holding, you are left with a terrifying freedom. No one is coming to tell you who you are. No authority will hand you a finished identity. You must create it yourself, or you will spend the rest of your life borrowing one from the crowd. This is the birthplace of radical self-responsibility, and it is the foundation of every genuine discipline mindset. Because as long as you are waiting for permission from your parents, your boss, your partner, your timeline, your followers, you are not free. You are leased. And leased minds do not build unbreakable anything. Marcus Aurelius understood this from the throne of an empire. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Notice what he did not say. He did not say, "You have power over promotions, over other people's opinions, over whether the world applauds your choices." He said, "Your mind. That is the only territory you were ever meant to rule completely." Let me ask you something. How much of your current life is a performance designed to keep other people comfortable? How many opinions do you swallow? How many ambitions do you delay because someone in your circle might feel threatened by your hunger? How many versions of yourself have you buried to remain likable? The day you stop needing permission to exist is the day your real life begins, not the life that looks good in photographs. The life that feels true when no one is watching. That is self-mastery. That is how to be mentally strong when the room goes quiet and the only voice left is your own. Drop this affirmation in the comments right now. I release every borrowed identity and claim full authorship over the life I am building from this moment forward. The Übermensch, becoming the architect of your own soul. Nietzsche's most misunderstood idea is also his most powerful. The Übermensch, often translated as the overman or the higher human, is not a tyrant, not a bully, not a person who crushes others to feel tall. The Übermensch is the human being who has stopped outsourcing the creation of their values, who no longer asks the tribe what is good, what is worthy, what is allowed, who becomes the architect of their own soul. Schopenhauer, writing a generation before Nietzsche, drew a line that still cuts clean. Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. The Übermensch lives in that second category, while the crowd competes for visible prizes, titles, likes, the next rung on a ladder someone else built. The higher mind aims at targets the crowd cannot even perceive. Inner coherence, unborrowed purpose, a standard of excellence that does not require an audience to remain real. This is mindset transformation at the deepest level. You stop asking, will they approve, and start asking, is this true? You stop measuring your days by external validation and start measuring them by whether you moved closer to the person you decided to become. That shift is invisible from the outside, and that is precisely why it terrifies people. They can compete with your resume. They cannot compete with a man or woman who no longer needs the game. Carl Jung went even further into the darkness of this work. He wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Not improve yourself, not brand yourself. Accept yourself, the ambition, the anger, the hunger, the parts you were taught to hide so you would fit. Complete self-acceptance is not self-indulgence. It is the end of the internal civil war that drains your mental strength every single day. When you accept yourself completely, something irreversible happens. You stop negotiating with mediocrity. You stop apologizing for your standards. You stop dimming your intensity so smaller rooms can tolerate the light. You become dangerous, not to others, but to every version of yourself that was built on fear." By the 6th month, Ethan Cole had built a routine that looked almost monastic from the outside. Up before dawn, training until his lungs burned, deep work blocks that stretched 4 hours without a single notification. He had started a small consulting practice from that same kitchen table, and the clients who found him did not come because of a polished brand. They came because something in his stillness made them trust him more than the loudest experts in the room. One evening, an old colleague called, the same man who had taken the promotion. He wanted to catch up. What he really wanted was to understand how Ethan seemed freer, sharper, more alive, while he, the one who won, felt trapped inside the victory. Ethan listened. He did not gloat. He did not explain. When the call ended, he sat in the dark for a long time, sharp eyes fixed on nothing, and felt something settle in his chest that he had never felt in any office. The quiet certainty of a man who had stopped asking the world who he was allowed to be. But the hardest test was still coming, and it would not arrive as a phone call. If this content is speaking to something real inside you, click the subscribe button right now. Your support means everything, and there is so much more coming. The loneliness of the strong here is the part no one puts on the thumbnail. Building an unbreakable mind will cost you people. Not because you become cruel, because you become clear. And clarity is a solvent that dissolves relationships built on shared weakness. Nietzsche saw this with brutal honesty. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. The tribe does not hate you for failing. The tribe panics when you succeed in a direction it did not authorize. Your disciplined mindset becomes an accusation. Your early mornings become a judgment. Your refusal to gossip, to numb out, to stay small, all of it reads as betrayal to people whose identity depends on everyone remaining equally stuck. This loneliness is not a bug in the system, it is a feature of ascent. Every level of mental toughness requires a corresponding willingness to stand alone. The student who studies while friends party. The founder who builds while peers coast. The person who heals while the family insists on repeating the same wounds. Solitude is not the absence of love. It is the presence of a standard that will not be negotiated down for company. Epictetus, the Stoic who was born a slave and became one of the clearest minds in history, put it without decoration. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Read that slowly. The path to self-mastery will make you look strange to people who have never walked it. They will call your focus obsession. They will call your boundaries coldness. They will call your ambition arrogance, and if you need them to understand you before you continue, you will never continue. Think about it. How many times have you diluted a goal so it would sound reasonable at dinner? How many dreams have you edited for an audience that was never going to cheer for the unedited version? The loneliness of the strong is the tuition you pay for a mind that cannot be rented by the crowd. I want to invite you to do something that will solidify this process. Write in the comments a truth you are tired of hiding, an opinion you are afraid to voice, a standard you are done lowering, a direction you know is yours, even if no one around you understands it yet. This is part of the journey, claiming your voice, showing your presence, declaring that you will no longer bend just to remain easy to be around. Collective mediocrity and why it fears you. There is a force in every workplace, every friend group, every family system that does not have a name on the org chart but runs the culture anyway. Call it collective mediocrity. It is the unspoken agreement that no one will rise too far, question too loudly, or become too free. Because if one person breaks the ceiling, everyone else has to explain why they are still staring at the floor. A truly strong mind terrifies this force, not through aggression, through example. When you build mental strength that does not require constant validation, you expose the addiction others have to being managed, soothed, and told what to think. Your calm becomes confrontational. Your progress becomes political. Your refusal to participate in the shared complaint session becomes a quiet act of war. Machiavelli understood the dual nature required to survive this terrain. He wrote, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves." Building an unbreakable mind is not only about raw force, it is about perception. You must see the traps, the guilt trips, the subtle exclusions, the invitations back into old patterns dressed as love, and you must have the lion's courage to walk past them without apology. Let me ask you something. Who in your life becomes strangely cold the moment you start winning on your own terms? Who celebrates your small steps but goes quiet when your strides get longer? That reaction is data. It is not always malice. Sometimes it is fear wearing the mask of familiarity. Either way, you do not owe your assent to anyone's comfort. How to be mentally strong in the face of collective mediocrity is simple to say and brutal to live. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop auditioning for rooms you have already outgrown. You keep your standards high and your explanations short. Mental toughness is not loud, it is consistent, and consistency, over time, is what makes the mediocre nervous. Drop this affirmation in the comments if it hits you. I will not shrink my standards to fit rooms that were never built for the person I am becoming. The test arrived on a Thursday. Ethan Cole, tall, sharp-eyed, closely cropped dark hair, that same unsettling calm, was invited back to the old company. Not for his old job, for a leadership role that paid more than the promotion he had been denied. They had watched what he built from the outside. They wanted the results without understanding the price. He sat in a different conference room this time. Same burnt coffee smell, same fluorescent hum, different man in the chair. They offered him everything the old Ethan would have killed for. Title, salary, status. A seat at the table he once stared at from the wrong end. Ethan listened all the way through. Then he asked one question. Will I have the authority to change the culture that rewards comfort over courage? The silence that followed was answer enough. He stood. He put on his coat. And for the second time in his life, he walked out of that building, not because he had nowhere to go, but because he finally knew exactly where he would never return. What he built next would not fit on a business card, and the people who once pitied him would spend years trying to reverse engineer a strength they were never willing to pay for. The price and the power of an unbreakable mind. So what does it actually cost? This mind, so powerful it scares the world. It costs the version of you that needed to be liked more than it needed to be free. It costs relationships that only functioned while you stayed unfinished. It costs the soft addictions, the scrolling, the complaining, the endless preparation that never becomes action. It costs the fantasy that someone else will eventually give you the life you are too afraid to claim. And what does it give you in return? It gives you a spine that does not require an audience. A disciplined mindset that operates on rainy Mondays the same way it operates on inspired Sundays. A form of mental strength that cannot be gaslit, bought, or bored into submission. It gives you the ability to sit in a room full of noise and remain unmoved, not because you are numb, but because you have already decided. Nietzsche's entire project points here. Chaos becomes a dancing star. The death of borrowed gods becomes the birth of self-authored values. The struggle against the tribe becomes the solitude that forges the Übermensch. The loneliness, the misunderstanding, the quiet exits from rooms that demand your smallness, all of it is the tuition. The power is what remains when the bill is paid. You do not build an unbreakable mind by reading about it. You build it the way Ethan Cole did, one refused compromise at a time. One morning you show up when no one is watching. One standard you hold when it would be easier to lower it. One walk out of a room that was never going to honor the person you are becoming. Self-mastery is not a destination you arrive at and photograph. It is a practice you renew every day you choose the harder, right over the easier almost. That is the Nietzsche method stripped of academic dust and returned to the body. Become the kind of human being whose inner order is so complete that outer chaos loses its authority over you. Drop this final affirmation in the comments and mean it. My mind is my territory. My standards are non-negotiable, and I am done asking the world for permission to become who I already know I am. The walk continues. Ethan Cole never went back. Years later, people who had shared that first conference room would still tell the story of the man who stood up, put on his coat, and left without a speech. Some called it reckless. A few, quietly, called it the bravest thing they had ever watched. None of them knew the full arc, the empty apartment, the notebook, the second walk, the life built from a single decision to stop needing permission. But you know now, and knowing removes your last excuse. If this video reached the part of you that has been waiting for permission to rise, understand this. The permission was never coming from outside. It was always a door you had to open from within. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not too late. You are simply standing at the same threshold Ethan stood at, the moment before the walk. Do not stop here. The next video continues this transformation. We go deeper into the daily architecture of mental toughness, the habits, the boundaries, the inner protocols that turn philosophy into a lived weapon. You are not alone on this path. You are just ahead of the people still negotiating with their own potential. Stay close. The work is only beginning. So tell me, which stamp are you adding to your mindset today? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one.